I just finished setting up the Super Fence 2 for the next paddock rotation. We're going from the permanent fence there all the way up. You can see where the orange crankcase is right up there. So we go along this, and then the boundary fence over there will remain. We shift the sheep over, then we just take that fence up and stretch it across that short section up there. We're getting the alfalfa graze down. Wanted to do that because the grass is starting to come up. We still haven't had hardly any rain. I think we got a total of a ½ an inch in 2 different spurts. So here's the connection for energizing the paddock fence. These are like battery cables. So the top wire and then the bottom 3 wires are energized. So you clip one on here, then you clip it to a hot wire, and now it's energized. And so we try to place that closest to where we're going to enter, so we don't have to walk all the way around to do it. So that works there. And then there's another battery cable type thing over there at the corner where those orange corner posts are, right over there. And that connects the 2 line fences together. So that energizes the whole thing. It's not connected down there, so that when we take it off here, then the whole perimeter is not energized, so we can walk straight through rather than having to go all the way around. And they're not going to bother it in that short of time because they're trained to it now and they respect it. The Dorpers have always been curious, but they're kind of getting a little friendlier. This is the one I call Freckles, and she's letting me pet her now a little bit. That started last night. I let them come up to me, and there's 3 of them. There was 23019, 23029, and 23039, which is Freckles. So I don't know if there's a significance to the number ending in 9. I'm just kidding. But they're common. Number 11 Blue. She's one of the more curious of the Ile de France ewes. They've all calmed down really well, though. Just very calm. And we just walk among them. I'm checking the dog feeder and the water tank. It's over there, and this is the mineral feeder here. I think we've got at least another day in here. We want this grazed relatively short. That will get the cover off of the ground that we have reseeded. You can see some of it coming up here in the bare ground. You can see it better, but that's the paddock they just came off of. So you can see there's more growth over here still than there is over there, and it's okay to graze this shorter. There you can see some of the green lines there. That's the grass coming up. It's harder to see in the alfalfa, but here's some down here. So if we ever get some rain, which eventually we will, this should come up okay. The seed is still in the ground, and if you think about the natural cycle of grass and weeds, it drops its seed in the fall, and then it just lays there until the moisture and conditions are right, and then it germinates. So hopefully that'll take off, and we'll go from there. So this is after I think 2 days of grazing. So at least 1 more day and possibly 2. There's never been any sheep or goats on this ground, so the risk of parasitism by close grazing is negligible. I'd say 0 here on the alfalfa, and so we can graze it close. The alfalfa will come up, and that gets the foliage canopy off the ground and lets the sunlight and the heat get into the ground better, and to allow for germination of the... We're here at the mineral feeder, and you can see the little divots throughout. This was smoothed out yesterday, so they are consuming it. I just always mix it up. Sometimes it gets a little crust on it from the humidity, so we just smooth this out, and then they'll come up and take some more. It's a 50-50 mixture of trace mineral salt and then a mineral supplement, and it's actually a cattle mineral supplement which has higher copper, although by diluting it you get the appropriate copper level, because sheep do need some copper. You don't want them to have no copper, because then you get into a deficiency problem. But by mixing it half with salt, there won't be a problem with toxicity, and they'll get the copper amount that they need. And then the dog food's over here. This is her pen. She crawls underneath there. If you don't have this, the sheep and goats learn how to open the feeder and eat from it. And she's been feeding. You can see where it's fed down here. So we just check this every day. Make sure it's feeding out. Make sure there's no wet food in the trough down there, which there isn't. If there is, we just scrape that out. Just dumped that out and cleaned it, and now it's filling up with fresh water. And that should hold them until tomorrow. You see they're coming up here. They're probably going to want some water. Or not. Like I said, they're curious and they kind of follow me. I can see the Ile de France are coming over here too. So we'll just step back and see if they drink. They're drinking a little bit. So that water was a little warm and it had the dead grasshoppers. What's coming in now is cool water, and it's clean. So it's really important to keep clean, fresh water in front of them at all times. They're drinking less water, I think, on this pasture because the alfalfa has a higher moisture content. But they still need fresh water at all times. That aids in proper nutrition and digestion. And there's the Dorper. She's thinking about it. We've got that. You can see that clip there that she's nuzzling. That's an old, right there. That's an old bungee cord rope. And so I use that between the tank and the float because the tank's on an angle. And the screws, when you tighten that up, it lifts the float and then it overfills. See there, she's drinking a little bit now. So it overfills. So by putting that in there, it levels the float, and there it just shut off, and so it won't overflow. So that's why that strap's in there. Interesting note on the Ile de France ewes and the ram. When they arrived, we sent stool samples down and had them checked to do what they call an eggs per gram fecal egg count. And these were raised in confinement, so they had never been on pasture. And they came back with 0 eggs. There weren't any, which that's excellent. Normally they have some. And there were no coccidia as well, so that's something else that they can pick up in confinement. So excellent results on that. Shouldn't have an issue with worms right now, because like I say, there's never been sheep on this before. So they're grazing area that has not had exposure to the sheep. The Dorpers, when they came, they did have some worms and coccidia, so they were dewormed and had a coccidiostat. And after we did that, they really shut off well, so I think that was bothering them. The same thing with the goats. They had a lot of coccidia and some worms, and we used the medications on those. And after the medication, they hadn't shed out real well either. And especially after the second dose of the coccidia medicine, they all shed out. So I think the coccidia were actually causing an issue that doesn't show up as anemia. Bad cases, it shows up as diarrhea, watery diarrhea, and unthriftiness. But I think there's enough underlying issues with it that it was probably causing a little bit of protein loss, so they weren't putting it into their hair coat or their wool coat. So just an observation on my part. May not be true, but I kind of like to think it is. Down here checking out the ladies, as we affectionately call them, the does. There's 10 of them. And when we first turned them out here, they've been out here I think 4 or 5 days now. They were staying down at the far end and grazing down around there. And they've pretty well cleared out a lot of the grass and the desirable or tasty weeds that they enjoy. So now they're down here. And maybe this is part of their pattern. Maybe it's about noon here. Maybe they come here. There's shade trees, so under the shade. But you can see them over there. They're still going after the saplings. And there's a lot of grass out here for them. So they'll go after the browse first. And then they'll slowly work their way into this grass and this area here. Dylan's here. He's pretty good. Had an interesting situation last night. I was out here checking them, and I'm not sure if it was, I think it was this pile here. 9 of them were up here, and then all of a sudden I heard one calling, kind of like a frantic call, and Dylan heard it at the same time, and he's had no training. This is all just purely instinct, but he ran. I was walking down. It's kind of hard to get down there because it's pretty rocky and kind of uneven, and he ran around there to her. I thought maybe she was stuck underneath that wood pile, but he ran around there to her, and by the time I got down to the end of the wood pile, I could see the grass and stuff moving, and pretty soon, within a minute or so, she came up around here, and Dylan was right behind her, and she came up and joined the flock. So I was impressed because he heard that distress call, and he immediately went down and checked it, and saw that she got back up here. So don't know if that's what did it or not, but I like to think it is, and that he's doing what he was bred to do and what we want him to do. So you can see one of the goats there is on top of that little pile too. So there is a risk, they could slip and get stuck. So that's why it's important to check them every day and do a count. There you can see I just checked the dog feeder, and then Dylan went in after me, and he's in there nibbling right now. I have never had dogs on self-feed before, and I was concerned that they would overeat, but they don't. They eat multiple times a day and only just a small amount, and they're all in excellent condition. They're nice and lean, and he's a growing pup, so is Garrett. So we've got him on a high quality dog food, the Canada all life stages, and they're doing well on that. So that's the way it works. They just go in there when they want it, and then they leave it. So just thought I'd show you that today too. Here's the water spigot, one of them that we have. It's right along the fence line, and we just attach it to a hose. This one is just actually pretty close to the water tank there, but we can attach enough hose to go down that way or the opposite direction, or we've actually gone out that way with it too. So we've got these above ground water spigots about every 200 feet or so. 150, 200 feet, and it extends to the end of what we call the Miller pastures, and then there's one that actually cuts across and goes up, and then it extends north along the boundary line all the way up to within about 20 feet of that creek on the Northfield Woods and the North Field, and so then it's only about 200 feet to cross that creek. So we can put water anywhere on the property that we need it. Now this is just a fair weather system. When it gets colder this fall, we'll hook an air compressor on up there at the shed to the line, open all these spigots up, and we blow all the water out of the lines for winter, because it's not deep enough below the frost line to prevent freezing. So similar to an irrigation, a lawn irrigation, a sprinkler system, you gotta winterize it. The brothers, Dylan is on the right and Garrett is on the left. Dylan's with the goats. The goats are actually the other end of the paddock underneath that small tree there, right there. And he actually followed me up here, and then there goes Garrett. He's still got a little bit of a limp. He had shoulder surgery about 6 weeks ago. He's doing better. He's out here with our Texel ewe. Her name's Shirley, and our 2 Jacobs ewes, Patsy and Pearl, and we left them in there with him to give him some company. He doesn't have a large area to cover, so he still needs to kind of take it easy exercise-wise so he can heal. And then about 3-4 weeks, we will breed Patsy and Pearl and Shirley to our Ile de France ram, and that'll give them March babies. And then after that, the goats get bred at the same time. They'll have March babies. Ile de France will be bred for April lambs, and then the Dorpers will be bred for May lambs because they're younger. And you want them to lamb when they're about 14 to 15 months old, so that'll work out well. Friday this week, a couple days, Roger and I are going to go up and look at 4 registered Suffolk ewes. They are being exposed or bred right now and come from an excellent flock, mint gold range in De Pere, Wisconsin. So they've got 4 ewes that I think one of them's 4 years old and the other 2 are 2 years old, going to be 3. That they have lambs that they have kept from them, and they're downsizing a bit, so they're good ewes, they just don't need them in their breeding program. So we wanted to get 4 to breed to Lambert. That's our registered Suffolk that we're importing from Utopia Farms in Canada. And if you haven't checked out their channel, I encourage you to do so. Excellent daily vlogs, and excellent Suffolk and Dorset breeders in Canada. They're in Kingston, Ontario. So anyway, we're importing Lambert, and then Cracker, he's a Dorset Texel cross ram, and finishing up all the entry requirements for that. There's a lot of forms that I didn't even know about with transportation department and everything. So I started at the end of August, and we're going to be importing on October the 16th. So I started 6.5, 7 weeks ahead of time, and it's a good thing I did, because there was a lot of things I didn't know I needed to do. And it's understandable because, number one, border crossing, they're concerned about national security. So we have to have passport numbers, driver's license numbers. They want to know who's in the truck and where you're going. And then also, they also want biosecurity for the nation's sheep flock. So they got to make sure that they have the scrapie resistant DNA codes, and that they're healthy. So we're in the works of doing that. I think we're pretty much done. I'm just waiting for one more item, and should have that the next week or so, and then I can forward that, and we should have all our paperwork in place. So anyway, that's an update on our flock. Once we get the Suffolk ewes and the 2 rams from Canada, that will be it for livestock this year, and we'll sit tight with those. With those numbers, we'll have 32 ewes, 5 rams, which gives us more than what we actually need, but it gives us some flexibility as far as breeding daughters to a different ram, so we don't have inbreeding. And then we have the 10 goats, and then the 1 billy goat. So we'll stick with those numbers. Our goal is to eventually build the ewe flock up to about 50 ewes. We'll see. We've got enough land to support that, but we got to get these pastures upgraded. The first year is probably the worst year for our pastures, because they haven't had anything done to them as pastures ever. So this laneway down here was all scrub trees last year. We took the trees out and native grasses, but this is chicory and alfalfa and other grasses. So you can see where we've seeded that in this spring. It's taken off really well, and that's what we seeded out there. They really like the chicory. It's excellent for them. And so as our pastures improve, then we'll want to build up to about 50 ewes, because 50 aren't any more work than 32, and be an efficient number for us and give us a little more income for the farm. We'll go up to the hillside now and check Heidi the llama, and Joel the billy goat, and Elton, John, and here at the North Field pasture. And I don't have a third mineral feeder. Those things are about $350 a piece, and I just got 2. So we're using this bucket for these guys. There's not many of them, and they've been nibbling on it. And it's okay as long as it doesn't rain, and which this summer we had a little rain, so it's not a problem. Eventually I'll get another mineral feeder. Up at the barn there are 2 small mineral feeders that hang on the walls up there at the shed, and that suffices for that area. And then their water tank is here. Same thing, we've got it in the shade, so it stays pretty cool. There's a spider and some leaves. If you notice the rocks, those are there because we have to keep this to the point where the float shuts off first, because if this is lower than what the back is, then it continues to overflow. So there's been a learning curve to this, but we're doing pretty well. The boys are coming down. They like the apples. They eat those. So do the ground bees, so have to be careful when you're around here. If they hear the water tank going, a lot of times they'll come down because they know it's fresh water and they like to get a drink. So, but they seem to be doing well. Joel loves his scrub. So he has bent that sapling over. He's learned to push it down with his feet. And as you can see, he's straddling it. Right there. He's pushed it down, and he will eat all the leaves off that sapling. So, and the other goats have learned to do that as well. So that's how they clear out all this underbrush. They are great at cleaning out scrubland and reclaiming areas, and then that gets rid of the invasive species and allows the native grasses and native species to come back. So, like I say, they love their browse, and they're really good at clearing out that bunching on their apples. Lambert's actually learned that too. He didn't even know how to graze when he got here, and he just finished eating an apple. So occasional ones aren't bad. If they have access to them long term, the sugar and the acids in the apples actually rot their teeth, basically like in people. And if they have a long exposure to it repeatedly, they can actually lose their front teeth, and then that impedes them for grazing. So there goes Lambert. He's getting an apple now. So he's learned to have some dessert with his salad. Getting their salt and minerals. They don't eat much, but it's important to have it available. We're down here at the box elder grove. This area over here was seeded earlier this summer. There's a lot of burdock out there, and as you can see here, we've got this fenced off, so that's almost pure clover, some alfalfa. It was actually part of this hayfield, and when we put the permanent fence in, it cut that off. But Heidi and the boys, they're up there on the hill path. We have this laneway. This actually is the south end, and then on the north end there's another laneway. And there was a lot of alfalfa and forage out there for them to graze, but they'd grazed it down pretty well. And so they were down here yesterday, and I had decided to let them in here, and I put a fence around there. It's a 2-strand, and they respect that. It goes right over here. And then I gave them this much of this tall clover yesterday, and they've tramped some of it down, but they've also eaten it. So each day we're going to just give them a little bit more to graze until they've eaten off this whole thing. I don't want to turn them in there all of a sudden because there is a risk of bloat, but this kind of limits them to the amount that they can have. So anyway, that's the plan here. Had a site visit with USDA people, and also Grazer Land Incorporated. They are the people who are contracted to write the grazing plan for us, and they seem to think too that we might be able just to interseed this next year. Alfalfa notoriously dies off over time. This will be the second winter that this goes through, and we've got about a 30-40% stand now left from when we sprayed it 2 years ago. But with the freezing and thawing, she's thinking that a significant amount of this may die off, which isn't a bad thing for us. So rather than starting all over next summer, we can just interseed with the pasture mix and go from there. So we'll have to see how it goes next year and see how the pasture responds. We will be able to get 2 hay crops off of all this next year, and hopefully we have normal amount of moisture so we can get a larger hay crop. And we'll continue to graze some of this as well. They're doing fine on it, and it's excellent source of forage for them. So that's the update today, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, ring the notification bell, and hit the like button for our channel. That helps our channel out. And please share this video with a friend and leave us a comment. Thanks again for joining us at Norwal Farm.